February 11th, Tuesday. It's our work session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. This evening, we're going to be talking about the Aggieville design options, and Jason is going to be presenting. Welcome, Jason, Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. We're going to let Olson and OHH run through their slides, and then I have a few slides, which I've handed you a copy of, to cover once they're complete. So at this point, we'll have Kelly and Mark come up.
I'd like to have somebody cut the lights right above us. Thanks.
I didn't put my stage makeup on.
You're a little bright there, Wynn. Mark Bashamp with Olson, and appreciate the opportunity to be up here. And I know that we've been up here a lot regarding Aggieville, and we're ready tonight to move the chapter forward regarding 12th Street. And I've got here Kelly Thompson. He's with Ochsner Hare & Hare Design Studio for Olson. Has been developing these concepts over the last couple years, and we look forward to the discussion today. And what you're seeing today is really what were presented in November, and just with a couple more options based on that same concept as option one. So I'm going to turn this over to Kelly. If you have questions that they're coming up on either slide, please ask, and we'll probably tag team this depending on how the questions go. So, Kelly?
Good evening. My name is Kelly Thompson. As Mark mentioned, I'm with Ochsner Hare & Hare, the Olson Design Studio. And we're here again tonight to sort of bring you up to date on where we're at with the design options for Aggieville. This will be very similar to the presentation that we made in November. With a few other options. We were asked to look at a couple other things to maybe save some costs or look at some cost-cutting measures. So we have three options for 12th Street. The other part of the scope is Bluemont from North Manhattan to 12th Street, and then 12th Street from Bluemont down to Morrow. So we'll just roll right into these slides, and like Mark said, if you have questions, let me know. So this is the current design for Bluemont. As you'll notice, again, it's very similar to what we presented before. The sidewalks are alternating paver and concrete bands on both sides of the street. We do have at-grade planters with some benches niched in there on several places on the south side of the street. The north side of the street, you'll notice we try to be very rhythmic with our paving patterns and concrete bands. On the north side, it's not so rhythmic. And the reason is that we didn't want to come into that new building where they have some low retaining walls and other elements and set up a different pattern. So what we try to do up there is mimic the pattern where those brick bands are on the north side, mimics where the low walls are at the hotel. So it looks intentional that we're trying to set that up so it looks like it was done the first time around. So that's basically it for what we're doing along Bluemont. I'll just go ahead and roll to the...
But if the Bluemont is asking to be...
That is my understanding that they have...
To be excluded.
Right. Then
what we see on the north side there in front of the hotel...
would all just go away.
Would not be.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing anything up here at all. This would
and that
all,
would be all three of those boxes.
It would be everything in front of here.
Which two? Do you have a pointer?
Yeah, it may... Probably the whole block, actually.
So the long one and the little one on each side?
All of them.
It would be everything you see along this
The
side.
entire.
I see. So even the other brown boxes
Yeah.
clear to the corner, just because the Bluemont Hotel has asked to opt out, you would eliminate the entire block?
I think we could go either way. I think that was, the thought was to eliminate everything on that side, but that's not to say we couldn't do something. I think it would be a little odd just to have these three brick bands and then nothing else. Again, we're trying to set up a street scene that feels like you're part of the whole thing is part of Aggieville, and so that's why we're trying to get it on both sides of the street.
The other question there is the reason to do that is simply aesthetics. at this point? I mean, there's no damage to the sidewalk, the curb, I mean, we're just trying to make it look different?
Yes.
So,
To make it
you
all
know,
feel like a cohesive whole of the redo of Aggie.
And that's why it makes sense to me that maybe we don't do that right now, because it's serviceable and it could save a few dollars. I don't know, you don't have the, what would be the savings?
We have a rough estimate to not do the north side of the street at somewhere around $75,000.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. So we'll roll right into the 12th Street option, and I apologize that this is not oriented true north and south, but Bluemont is on the right side, Morrow is on the left, the new hotel is here, Aggie Lounge is here, Taco Lucha, So Long, and Tanner's on this side, so just have to play along a little bit. In front of the hotel, we continue with the pavers and banding as we go along. This sort of pull-off layout was given to us by the hotel. That's what they wanted to do. They had, I think, all concrete out here, but because we wanted to tie it into what we were doing with everything else, we decided we wanted to do brick pavers in there. And again, mimicking that on the other side of the street. The street itself is a concrete curb and gutter section until you get to the alley. Once we get to the alley, we have from face of building to face of building pavers across the entire thing. There is no curb and gutter in this section on option 1. It's an inverted crown, so everything would slope from the building face to the center of the road, and there would be a drain down the center of the road. What we're trying to do here is set up more of a pedestrian plaza for times when we want to shut down 12th Street for a festival. And that also sets up what happens on the north block, just south of Morrow to, Laramie, where we're talking a pedestrian mall area in that specific space. So again, we're setting up as we go what happens. This will still have traffic, one-way traffic. We've taken away the parking. Sorry, it's two-way traffic, one lane each direction. But it will have retractable bollards on each end so that it can be walled off so that the vehicular access is not granted and it becomes all pedestrian access.
Kelly?
Yes.
Right in front of the hotel, that's going to be deep enough for a car to...
Yeah, this is a drop-off
couple
lane.
of cars
Yep,
to
pull
pull
off.
in there, get
That's
out of the
exactly
way and all
right.
that, so, okay.
Will the trees, sorry. Go ahead, Linda.
Oh, I just wanted to ask about the pavers in the middle of the street and how that will accommodate traffic or will be blocked off.
There is two different thicknesses of pavers. There's a
Right.
pedestrian paver and a vehicular paver. So in the middle of the street, it will be the vehicular pavers that are the thicker thickness, the thicker, meant to withstand heavy-duty traffic.
How heavy?
It's meant for,
I mean, we have had some streets, Juliet, for example, was torn up
Right.
because of semis going to the newspaper and going to the post office. And evidently, the city is helpless to do anything about that. And so I just want to make sure we don't build something and then have it torn up.
It will be the same section as what you're having for Juliet in the New Street section. There'll be concrete underneath the pavers on this, the same as what has been done on Juliet. It'll be a long-term, it'll carry semi-traffic, it'll carry all type of loading.
So you're talking brick size, not 12 by 12s.
Brick size.
Regular brick size.
So I have a question. I think the bricks are actually a good idea. They tend to slow down traffic considerably, and they last much, much longer than anything else, and they weather well, so you can do a little bit of that. But I was wondering about the trees. In some areas, and I don't know if it's in Manhattan, but in some communities, as trees grow, they tend to block signage or tend to get in the way of mainly the signage and points, and also if they were going to have any kind of meetups in the middle of the restaurant areas. How tall do you anticipate is this going to be like downtown where they have the trees?
I'm not familiar what trees are planted downtown, but what we're thinking is this medium-sized shade tree, street tree that does well in an urban environment. We I have several that we sort of picked out, and I'll just rattle them off for you. The Shantung maple, a black gum, trident maple, or honey locust are just a few of the options that we could use. But we want to make sure and get with Parks and Rec staff and the forester and see what is working well for them, and then base our choices off of that. But a medium shade tree. We don't want anything that's going to grow. It's not a big sycamore that's going to grow up and over the buildings or anything like that.
Something low maintenance, something
Yes.
that doesn't go too much.
Yeah, that's not
and something-
dropping stuff all the time and
Right.
clogging up the gutters. So all those things are being
Exactly.
taken into consideration.
And signage is important. We have a lot of little signs all over the place sometimes, and we want to make sure that people can actually see the signs before they pass it.
Right.
So things of that sort. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very good. So that kind of sums up the plan. The rest are more 3D options. And so, again, you've seen most of these before. This is option one, and you're looking south down 12th Street. So Tanner's is over here, Taco Lucha, So Long up on this end. Trees on this side, the west side. And on the east side, as we discussed before, since we have the power lines, we don't want to put trees underneath the power lines. So we have shown some shade structures on that side to have areas that are shaded and not, a little bit of a respite from the weather. Planters that are lower to the ground, bench seating that is built in, made of stone. We also have monolithic stone seating in several places along both sides. We do have off-the-shelf benches that we have on this side. So we've got a combination of everything to really make it a lively environment for the street scene.
Kelly, one more question.
Yep.
Has there been any interest in burying some of those power lines while we got the street torn up?
I will defer to Jason on that one. No, the question has been asked.
Was
for
it
sure.
way too much money?
I-
West Star doesn't want to do it just out of the goodness of their heart, probably.
So if you listen to our podcast from Monday, you have the answer to
Okay.
this. But, no, I'm just kidding.
Haven't got that yet.
It's a little bit complicated. So there's a number of businesses being served off the alley with different capacity of electricity.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
The other side of this is it's difficult for Westar to do this on a block basis.
Okay.
You're going to extend into other areas, and it would impact that alley. So every business that's located along that alley with a different capacity has a different financial burden to then rehook back to the new power.
Okay, that's
And in some instances, it's 10, 20, or 30 grand per business to hook back up. When we talked to Westar, we talked about a scenario where that northern half of the block between 11th and 12th, adjacent to Bluemont, has a potential for redevelopment. If that occurs, that would be the appropriate time to go ahead and move forward with burying lines, not only down that alley, but in this area. Now, clearly, if we invest all this money, we're gonna have to talk about doing some things maybe a little bit different by way of cutting these things off and boring. But there might be other ways to get that power distributed within Aggieville to where we don't have to go underneath this area as well.
Okay, all right, very good, thanks.
So again,
I wanted to ask about the alley on the west side. I see in the middle of 12th Street, the alley, it obviously is concrete as you turn into the alley to the east, but there's nothing on the alley to the west.
on this
And-
side.
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
so there's no improvement to that alley, it will be concrete, it will be what it is now?
that's my understanding. Our scope is right-of-way to right-of-way, and so
Okay.
we're cutting off at the building
Right there.
face for now.
We just authorized a pour this week. Last week, I think Brian sent me pictures. We actually patched a portion of that alley this week.
Okay.
There was infrastructure that was on private property that had to come over to public property underneath the alley, so it had to be torn up. Some Kansas Gas is underneath there, so they just put back that alley just for a short segment.
Okay.
Ultimately, the alleys are part of the Aggieville vision.
Yeah.
And we'll be back into all of them in a later phase. It's kind of in that 4th or 5th year phase where we finally get back into the alleys, but they will have their own treatment and their own design associated with them.
But we won't have to tear up anything that we're building now in order to do that work later?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So again, back to the 3D rendering, you can see the pavers from face of building to face of building. This dark band down the middle represents the drain that would be in the center of the roadway. To help orient the drivers, we have put a linear paver band along each side that sort of marks where the outside of the lane would be. So it's just a visual cue to this is where you're supposed to be. And along with that, we have bollards that protect cars from going over and into the pedestrian areas. So that's one of the things you'll see is there's bollards. It's hard to see on the side. The next slide, you'll see it along each side all throughout the drive. We have some alternating bands of different pavers across that, again, facilitate the pedestrian flow when it's shut down. That makes it feel like, okay, this is all right to move around and move back and forth across the street. This is another view looking the other direction, looking north up 12th Street from Morrow. Tanner's over here, So Long and Taco Lucha. And again, you can see the trees on the west side, the shade structures on the east side, planters throughout as we go, the monolithic stone benches at sort of these entries of the cross traffic, and then more stone seating as you go along here, and then there would be more bench seating over on the other side. One of the things, I think this one shows it. We do have room to put in cafe seating for the restaurants on both sides of the street if that becomes an option. So we've allocated enough room and made sure once we get if the cafe seating wanted to go in, we still have room for the pedestrians to get around that and get through.
Do we pay for the fencing around the restaurant patio?
I'll defer to
Is that
Jason, but
something-
I would say
they may
that
have their own style.
I would say that if
or-
we're providing them with the space, let them take care of the fencing and the seating
okay.
inside their seating areas.
I like that plan, okay.
So this is just one more view looking south again down. Oh, sorry, this is option 2, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so we've moved on to option 2. So what changes in option 2 is we've gone away from the inverted crown in the middle of the street section where it comes to the middle, and we've replaced it more with just a standard curb and gutter section, which is typical of most, 95% of the streets. So all of the pavers that you had in the middle are now been replaced with concrete. And that's really the only difference between option 1 and option 2. Everything else remains the same. And so we just have a couple of views, different views to think about as you showing what it was. All the views for each of the options are the same if you care. And then a view looking back to the north, again with the curb and gutter section. So moving to option 3, the big changes here is we are still with the standard concrete curb and gutter street section, but we have removed the trees along the west side. We still have the planters, and we can plant them with perennials and shrubs and grasses and native flowers and that sort of thing, but we have taken the trees out of this scenario. So that gives you a view of what that may look like. It opens things up. You can see more of the street furniture underneath, the string lights on the west side, but everything else should stay the same from there. Just another view looking back the other way, looking the hotel in the background, Tanner's, Taco Lucha, So Long, without the trees on the west side. And just one more shot of that. So those are the 3 options that we've kind of come back with, and I think we're looking for you guys to make a recommendation. Any other questions?
I have a question about who controls the space on the side where the restaurant patios are. There's, so if I were at Taco Lucha and I wanted to go across the street onto Tanner's patio with my food because it was shaded, I could do that, right? And the business would not be controlling whether I could or could not?
Food, accurate. If you're just dealing with food on the sidewalks, that's one thing. I think where you have to think about this too is alcohol and just you're at an extension of a business. If you get up and take your food out of Lucha today and walk over to Tanner's somebody may be following you, asking, where are you going? Have you paid your ticket? So you have to obviously, you're part of the business. So you can clearly get your food to go from the Lucha and go wherever you'd like. Some businesses don't let you bring food into their business. But out on the sidewalk, if you leave Lucha with your takeout
That's
or
my question.
your food, I mean, these other areas are going to be for their customers. So they'll somewhat control those during operation. The thing to think about and remember, any outdoor dining that's going to occur in Aggieville or downtown has to come through a process to be permitted by the city. So in order for them to build these areas, we're going to give them permission to do so. We're going to have schematics and drawings and understandings of whether or not they're going to serve alcohol out there or not. These images are trying to give you an idea of what could happen, also along with all the improvements we plan to make within the city's right-of-way adjacent to these buildings. Some of these outdoor dining areas that we even show in these images, we're talking about making changes that would allow those to move towards the curb line to where that sidewalk would be consistent up against the building, which would allow a server to come out of those doors and walk through the sidewalk to the eating area. It doesn't have to be right up against the building itself. If there's enough room for ADA clearance, the server can walk across that area and reach those eating areas if we change our local ordinances. Today, they actually have to be adjacent to and encompass a door. We can change that law locally. Lawrence has it changed, Wichita has it changed, Kansas City areas have it changed. Manhattan is a little bit more restrictive on how we handle sidewalk dining today. But just so you know, all those things are future-based decisions that the commission will have in front of them. Today, it's really a lot about the planting areas, the knee walls, the shade structures, and the trees. Those dining areas will be something we'll deal with in the future.
Okay, we're not talking about them tonight. Take them off the table. Okay.
I think part of the question though was that if
Who
you left
controls it?
Lucha's dining area that was on the patio, on the sidewalk, to seek shade on, that's not part of somebody's fenced-in area on the public sidewalk, you could do that today. It'd just be to get shade under a tree or shade under a structure. Not all those shade structures are necessarily going to be assigned to anybody. That could be negotiated to be part of that space, but they're meant to be a public space.
No, I was just thinking, if the public is paying for these, then I want to treat the businesses fairly. I want to treat the public fairly. And if you seek shade, then the trees are only going to be on one side. And it just, it depends on what time of day it is. I just wanted to understand it better.
And something to keep in mind, as you move to that block south of this, from Morrow to Laramie, if you recall during our visioning process, this is the area where we've eliminated vehicles. This is 100% pedestrian. And that area will have far more amenity for the pedestrian environment to occur, and more opportunity for those businesses to come out into that area and occupy space with the permission of the city to conduct outdoor dining and possibly alcohol consumption. But in that visioning process, this half block and then the next full block were the areas that we really identified as a pedestrian type mall area. Originally, we talked about Morrow, and we got a lot of feedback throughout our process to move it off Morrow, keep Morrow basically vehicle and pedestrian oriented, not just pedestrian. So we moved the mall type area to 12th Street. This half block starts to set the trend for what you're going to experience moving further south. So similar issues, similar topics to discuss when we get into that area.
As people leave the hotel and their drive up, they will probably go to the alley and then turn in to get to the parking garage, their own parking garage. So they won't be going down this street. That was another question I had, is about the use of this street. If it, on an ordinary day, it'll be open, and then for special events, you would put the bollards up and close it in order to have a particular event. And if you're interested in that, you would contact the city about setting that up like you do Blue Earth Plaza?
Yep, just like they would on, you know, the Aggieville
Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day Fun Run.
Uh-huh.
They shut down a lot of
Okay.
the streets in Aggieville for that event, the walk and the run and the parade. It'd be a similar type of approach.
Do they
special
pay
event.
for that?
Yeah,
Okay, because of the staff time involved? Yeah, okay.
and if you start to involve alcohol, there's even more costs
More,
associated with that. But from a vehicle perspective, that person going to the hotel is going to come off Bluemont and into their parking garage. I mean, they may drop somebody off here, but into their garage so they can park. The days where we have this blocked off, they'll essentially come out of the parking garage and have to exit
go
out
back.
Bluemont.
Or
The
come
days,
down
the days it's
alley.
open, yeah, you could go down the alley too, but the days it's open, they could obviously come down 12th. And once they hit Morrow, if we go ahead and finish the pedestrian block to the south, they'll have to go, basically, the way they're configured today, they'll have to go east because of the one-way on Morrow. We got to talk about the future of Morrow as well and how that's going to be configured.
And there's no plan to change the right out only going north on 12th Street. We're gonna continue to not allow traffic to go west. That'll all stay the
Yeah, the
same.
medians are staying on 12th Street, so you won't be able to take a left out of there.
Has there been any discussion with the MPO about multimodal grants or anything like that that could help, since there is going to be more pedestrian traffic, the hotel, some of the vision here might align with some of the opportunities they have? I was just curious.
I haven't specifically for Aggieville. I know North Manhattan, they've been involved with some of the things we've been pursuing for pedestrians as you come out of Aggieville and head north into the campus area. We're wide open to that. I mean, I think we got a lot of money to spend here in Aggieville if we're gonna reach the vision. I think there's plenty of opportunity if they do have access to those grants, we could leverage those. Happy to talk with Stephanie and Jared about that.
To my knowledge, the multimodal grants would have to have some sort of a regional partnership where we're transporting people throughout the region. The commission saw a grant application for the 600 block by the library just maybe a month or so ago, where we are partnering with ATA to do some improvements in the 600 block of points. I don't know that this would be one of those places, but we can certainly explore those avenues.
So I wanted to know, to discuss between brick and concrete. I've been to other communities where the brick looks really outstanding, and it has a certain calming nature to it. But does the inverted crown street that you talked about, that only goes with brick as opposed to concrete?
You could do it either way. I think the intent here, Mayor, is to create the pedestrian environment. With the pavers and the brick, you give a consistency throughout the street and the sidewalk that gives, when we're blocked off, gives that pedestrian a good flow and feel that they can walk from either side of this street out into the street and sidewalks, and it'll all be kind of seamless. If we go to a concrete, the feedback and reactions we've received from the team, you might as well go curb and gutter, because now you've basically created, it's not really a barrier, but your mind is gonna go back to what you're used to. And if you're on brick pavers on sidewalks and you enter a street, you know you're in a street. So the concept that they've proposed with the pavers is much more pedestrian in mind. If we go back to the concrete, it's a shift to that vehicle, that's basically their area. Pedestrians stay on the pavers.
I'm leaning towards more of the brick outlay and the inverted crown, unless there's different feedback that you're gonna get from everybody else. I'm not, I don't know how the rest of the Aggieville district feels about these options as well. Trees are the only things that I often have a concern about, especially in such an area that's well used and you have high traffic, pedestrian traffic. That's my only concern. It seems like a little detail as far as trees. I prefer shrubs and planters as opposed to any type of trees. But other than that, I think, you know, if we discussing options as far as A, B, and C, or 1, 2, and 3, I want it to be more pedestrian friendly. And it just has a, like I said, it has a vibrant feel to it, that urban nature to it, more family friendly, as opposed to being like a bar district, which
Yeah.
we're trying to get away from.
The only thing I was gonna point out, this is the side of the street, we're talking about trees. It's adjacent to Tanner's. Tanner's front door and signage, obviously, right off
Right.
Morrow. They do have signage, clearly, on the 12th Street side, but it isn't their entry either. Putting, there are 9 trees? Yeah, 9 trees along this corridor, I think is a drastic improvement from what you look at today.
Oh, I agree. I
And
was
I
thinking
think
more
it's
like the
something-
planters and shrubs
Yeah.
as opposed to the trees. Definitely you need some type of foliage there and greenery. I certainly understand that. It's the type, and Tanner's is like that now, but in the future, you know, I don't know what else might be there. They may have more windows, more type, I don't know what type of, business might move into those areas, but I was just seeing that, as a concern, but it's not something that, that I'm stuck on.
Sure.
Sure, certainly flexible, and the businesses know best. So if they are comfortable with having trees opposed to planters and shrubs and all of those things, they know best what works for their businesses, and I'd rather go with that.
A lot of our discussion with the owners and the businesses to date has been more about losing parking and 2 lanes of traffic.
Right.
Which is where we were several months ago before we turned them loose with the 2 lanes of traffic and no parking. 10 stalls, that was really the focus of a lot of conversation. We don't have a lot of trees in this plan so far. You've seen preliminary on Laramie, we have 3 trees. You've seen Bluemont, we have 5. Obviously, when we worked downtown, there was one every 20 feet, 30 feet. So, I mean, it was very intense, and that was part of that process and a part of a lot of the feedback we received for 4th Street, 3rd Street, Points. They all have their tree grates and their trees. It's a tough environment, and we see different success rates with trees downtown. Some of them are 25 feet tall, some of them don't get over 10. Some of them really struggle. And I think one challenge we've given OHH is, if you're gonna plant trees, make sure you have big enough planter areas, make sure they have enough water, and clearly the shade is something that a lot of people do desire. And that it will create a much cooler environment in certain areas if we can get some shade. I think that's why you see the shade structures on the other side of the road too. If you've stood out in front of Lucha or So Long in the middle of the summer at 6, 7 at night, it is extremely warm.
No, I
So-
think those are fantastic. Who takes care of all of that?
The city will.
City will, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and talking with Eddie about this plan, clearly we'll get involved with the types of bushes, the types of flowers. We'll get away from annuals and be more into perennials like we are downtown. That helps with the staffing and the intensity in which we're down there. Irrigated, obviously gonna help a lot. Cody and his team, horticulturist, have been down in Aggieville in a few spots this year, more so than we have been in the past. And I know it's been appreciated by the district, but they're doing a fantastic job, both downtown and Aggieville. And I think some folks are pretty excited about what's been laid out so far.
I would have liked to see more of that underground structure for Wi-Fi and such. We have talked that, but I know it might be cost prohibitive, and Westar's probably not, or Evergy may not be interested as much.
Remind me what the block south of Morrow will be on 12th Street. So how these two blocks will tie together.
I'll see if I have it, Commissioner. If I don't,
I just
can
don't
get it to you.
remember.
That pedestrian
Yeah.
mall area.
Uh-huh.
Let me see if I can get there. I don't know if we got there in this one, did we? Yeah. I don't have access to the G Drive. I think it is out on our website.
Okay. From a design position, they would integrate well together.
Yeah, that's,
That's what I really want to know.
Yeah, so we're basically setting up with the block between Morrow and the alley, what's gonna go on further south. So it's the transition from
Okay.
Bluemont to the hotel to where we're getting more into pedestrian activity and then full-on pedestrian mall at the block between Morrow and Laramie.
And then what is the Morrow intersection?
Not fully baked at this point in time. We don't, I mean,
Okay.
we're not under contract for that.
I don't see it.
We've had to think about it a little bit. I mean, we know that Morrow is our big money shot
Right,
right up and down.
yeah.
So that's where we're gonna be spending a lot of the money that is allocated towards this. But we just haven't gotten to what that really is gonna be yet.
we're still north on this one. We'll keep looking for it.
Okay.
By,
well,
by the end, we
Thank you.
should have something.
I just
for it.
wanted to be reassured that there's a continuity.
Yeah.
Other questions for Jason? Or?
So let me, if you don't have any more.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, for anyone.
Let me pull up just a quick PowerPoint to run through basically what we covered in the memo and for this evening. So yeah, 3 design options. Feedback's important tonight. Financing, need to kind of know if you're a strong proponent of benefit districts. Downtown, we had a 95-5 split, meaning we went back to the property owners to participate in all the improvements adjacent to them. Now, these will come with their property taxes, special assessment that will be for 20 years. And then a timeline for construction. So just to recap on the option 1, we were about 1.75 million. This is that inverted crown pavers for the streets and the sidewalks. We drop about $100,000 when we go to curb and gutter, that's concrete for the streets, but we continue with the pavers on the sidewalks and that Bluemont streetscape. And again, on Bluemont, we obviously own the right-of-way that the sidewalk is in. It's really your call on whether or not you want that integrated. They've obviously expressed their opinion. We showed them a lot of previous designs. They weren't real excited about us tearing up their sidewalk that they put in to put pavers in. There's construction, there's inconvenience with it. And then if we go the benefit district route, they're gonna pay 5% of it. So package that all together, you got the email you did. And then option 3, curb and gutter, concrete streets, still with the pavers, but we do remove the trees, basically drops another 100,000. So your options, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, moving forward with 12th Street and Bluemont.
But option 1, if you drop the Bluemont sidewalk, drops it down to 168.
Yeah, another 75 grand off there. Yep,
So that makes it closer, in price.
yep, for sure.
Will the Marriott also be assessed as part of the benefit district?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and they would pay for 2 sides
Yeah,
of the project. Yep.
Bluemont and 12.
But that 5% is gonna be much cheaper than if they were building their hotel without any,
Sure.
they'd be putting all that in on their own, for sure. Financing, wanted to reiterate where we were in the memo and where I was on January 28th, just so you're clear. When we talk benefit districts, those are the annual numbers that we would be potentially leveraging for the entire district for basically the first initial 16 and a half. And what it would impact, which is Laramie and 14th and North Manhattan adjacent to the garage and Laramie Street and then 12th Street. And then you get into the remaining 13.5 million, and we look at that from a 10-year perspective to try to debt service that a little quicker so we don't spend so much in interest. We know the TIF revenues in the first one are for 20, so we went ahead and structured that for 20 and ran it out under these scenarios. I do want to point out the benefit district again on 5%, 95%. There's a public hearing process that doesn't require owners to sign a petition. We did this downtown. We held the hearing. We went through the protest period. They didn't have any signatures. We weren't aware of a petition out there to undo it. It passed. They're now helping pay for Points Avenue. For downtown, we used proceeds from our tax increment finance district that were up and above what it required to retire to TIF A bonds. We called them TIF B bonds because we got excess revenues, and we've used those revenues for the past decade to help pay for Points Avenue. So it didn't come at the property tax. It's not something that taxpayers throughout the community have paid for. It's a different scenario in Aggieville. We've got some property tax money coming into this. So a 595, it just mirrors where we were downtown, but I'm just explaining it's not the same set of circumstances. You can increase that, but it can't be any lower than 5 if you do a benefit district. We can go 100% to the city, but 5% has to be, if you're gonna start splitting things, that's about as low as you can go. You can obviously go higher, but new market tax credits, potential for another $3 million to help offset some of those costs. If you insert the $3 million into this, it really starts to lower your property tax impact to your households and your businesses. It can really move some numbers in a hurry. We can get that money within the first 7 years. It could actually even potentially even help draw down the amount we actually issue in debt and help us save on interest costs as well.
So the economic development sales tax would be $1.5 million total?
That's
or
the
$1.5 million a year?
That's a 1.5 million for the annual. Yeah,
Annual.
For 10 years
That's
on that
what I
debt
thought,
service.
yeah,
Yep.
okay. And at the current rate, we don't have that. I mean,
Current rate-
beyond this current life of the current sales tax.
No, this would all be about the renewal or a new tax that
Yeah.
we would ask for.
Okay.
Absolutely. Timeline, and this is where our decisions this evening really start to tie in and make sense. It's kind of why we're pressing you a little bit on these options and a commitment to move forward. Next Tuesday, we have a city construction manager at risk contract with McCown Gordon. We are proposing. We vetted McCown Gordon through a pretty detailed process for the garage in Laramie Street. It's going to be about $14.5 million worth of projects. We have this $2 million project roughly in front of us for the next summer and fall. We're advocating McCown become our construction manager at risk. They'll proceed with some pre-bidding services, probably about 10 or 15 grand in that contract, and then they'll deliver a guaranteed maximum price back to the commission, which will basically authorize construction to start. Our alternatives are to try to bid this. And if I look to Brian today, being February 11th, and I ask him to bid out this project, we're not going to meet the deadlines that we need to meet for the hotel. The hotel needs a water line this summer, and they also need coordination to take place over the next really year and a half. They're not going to open until spring of 21. And we need a contractor to be on board and help us phase in these projects that allows the hotel to maintain the ability to construct their hotel, but once they're close enough to allow us in to build those sidewalks, we have a contractor ready to do that. This option for us is efficient. There's a guaranteed maximum price, which means McCown will go out and bid a large portion of this project, so it'll be competitively bid. We have a lot of locals participate in that, and ultimately they'll bring back a price that we'll concur with. So we're advocating for that contract to move forward. As I mentioned, 12th Street, Bluemont Avenue would be a construction project through 2020. We would start more than likely as soon as school gets out in May and try to get from the alley to Morrow complete before school starts in August. There'll be a phased approach on the north side because, as I mentioned, we can't finish those sidewalks adjacent to the hotel until they're at a point in construction. It makes sense. You don't want their equipment and their heavy loads on that brand new sidewalk and those pavers in the sidewalk. The concrete on the north side between the Bluemont and the alley could be phased in a way, and it actually could be done while they're under construction, and they could use it and it really wouldn't impact it given the standards that we build our streets to. So there's a phased approach. We met with Law Construction last week, had a good conversation with them about phasing both the water line and the street and sidewalk improvements. We're gonna start meeting more regularly with them to make sure we coordinate effectively. And then they're looking at an April opening of 21. Construction, as I mentioned, that coordination is imperative, and we're going to have to communicate very well with all these team members. This project will impact our businesses. It'll impact the pedestrians in that area and vehicle movement. We're going to run into situations we know where the only access to So Long, Tanner's, Lucha, not necessarily So Long and Tanner's because they can access off Morrow, but the access points for Lucha will be compromised at times. We'll maintain access, but it won't always be on pavement. They may be walking on temporary surfaces to get in and out of there. We have to coordinate with Stickles, the 3 drop parking stalls that they have in front of their business today, or 2. I think there's 3 total, but there's 2 that are for unloading and loading. Those are going to be compromised for a period of time too. We have to work with them. So we have probably 8 to 9 owners, if we include Bluemont and 12th, when it comes to a benefit district. We've got a lot of tenants and businesses to deal with on the construction side. We're gonna jump into this and you're likely gonna hear just how long this has taken and how frustrated people are with their loss of businesses. We had the same experience downtown. Fortunately, we weren't replacing the entire street out on points. We were just into sections of it, but it still impacted their businesses. And we left them their sidewalks as well, the majority of them. So they're impacted. Construction will just flat out impact them. So this evening, looking for that option from you so we can turn these guys loose to get construction drawings complete. That'll allow McCown Gordon to develop their GMP, more likely in March, April, and then they could start construction once that's approved come May. Benefit districts need to know if that's your desire. They can be controversial under that public hearing process. We've had a lot of discussion in the past, even on our alleys, about doing this from a public hearing standpoint. It's basically forcing them to participate for a 20-year period via their special assessments on their tax bills. And then again, just that moving forward with McCown Gordon, making sure you're comfortable with that this evening. Questions?
Thanks, Jason. Questions for Jason?
On the Stickle Cleaner thing, is there, where, or will their customers park in the future to load and unload? What's the plan?
We're gonna need to work with some adjacent properties and see if we can get some concurrence. There are stalls, whether it's the convenience, the gas station, Rickles. You start getting further away, obviously that's gonna be even more problematic. We kicked around some different ideas about maintaining access in the alleys and possibly even maintaining some sort of access on that northern half of 12th Street from Bluemont to the alley. We need to look at those scenarios closer to see if we can even do them. But I think Brian and I and others have talked about possibly just trying to find them 2 or 3 stalls somewhere else for a short period of time.
I'm more concerned about the long term. Yeah, once there's no parking at all on 12th Street.
Actually, on the northern half, there is parking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it comes back.
Okay, so just the
Just the southern
restaurants
half.
part
Yep.
is, okay, I didn't
Yep.
see that. So, well, go ahead.
Yeah, just, could you go back to that financing slide, because, we're talking about, saying okay to 12th Street, which is, 1.8 million, but that financing slide is for the entire Aggieville project.
This 16.5 will be before you this year to talk about. It's
Okay.
12th Street, it's the parking garage, and it's Laramie. All 3 of them are under full design. All of them have, if we concur with McCown going as a construction manager at risk, all 16.5 will have a construction manager at risk contract in place. So 14.5 of that 16, you do have a construction manager at risk contract. You will be seeing a GMP. Now, you can still stop those projects and only incur the bidding cost, but we're down the road on, and that's why I show this when I didn't carve it
Right,
out.
I just wanted
a
to be
bigger
sure everybody,
picture.
you know, anybody
Yep.
watching out there understands that, you know, this is a bigger picture.
Yep.
And then that second half there, that's really a due out, and it's gonna depend on renewal of the economic development tax. Because there is a difference, you got TIF at the top, and of course, that would be used up, in the top portion. And so, you know, and a lot of people have been concerned, you know, about, okay, what's the property tax, you know, impact, and it comes out to about, if you lose the whole thing, about $29. And, I've gotten several emails on that, people wanting to know, why should I have my property tax raised to improve a business in Aggieville? And that's why I think it's essential that, we do the benefit district, you know, as part of that, because there has been some pushback on that, at least emails I've received. But I just want to be sure everybody understands that's a bigger picture on what's happening, and we also can't really just pluck this street out of that top box, because it's all sort of combined. You know, you've got to do this with the garage, or it doesn't work.
So you mentioned something about half a dozen, 8 businesses on the benefit district, but who is all gonna be, if you're doing Laramie and the thing, and you're doing 12th Street, is it everybody in the Aggieville gonna pay in the benefit district?
Eventually, yes.
Eventually.
If we keep doing all $30 million.
Okay, but as far as this first phase, it'll be the ones that are generally impacted in North 12th Street.
Yes, 12th Street.
12th Street, the
And then
north
we'll
part.
move over Bluemont. They'll have a little bit.
Okay.
When you think about that $75,000 on the north side, if the Bluemont Hotel was participating, it'd be at 5%. So roughly $3,500, $4,000, and then spread that out over 20 years. That's the annual invoice they would receive for their share of that $75,000 sidewalk.
Okay, so they're not taking 75, well, okay, so just so I understand, so the 75,000 is what the Aggieville businesses will pay every year?
No, sorry.
Okay, over the
70
life,
I was just giving you an example,
Right.
north side of Bluemont.
Right.
That sidewalk, they told you was estimated at 75 grand.
right, okay,
5% of that total should be about 4 grand. Now take that 4 grand and divide it by 20 years.
okay,
That's essentially what the Bluemont Hotel would participate on an annual basis.
okay.
So 20 into $4,200 a year for their sidewalk.
Is it like the 310 that you put up in that box,
What's that?
in the financing part?
So that's a different, and they won't see that on their tax bill. That's basically what supports the bond and interest fund.
That's the
So,
property tax
Yes,
part.
that's part of the levy that they would be assessed on their property. A special assessment, if you've lived in any residential subdivision that has specials, you clearly have your property tax, and then they have a special assessment. The Bluemont Hotel would pay their property taxes, but right below it, there would be a special assessment due the first half and the second half that would split that $200 payment, 100 to 100, and that's what they would pay essentially on an annual basis.
And I want to ask, you know, 2 other things. One, you know, when people talk about, well, why should residential property tax, it is also important to note, as you said, that every business down there is paying property tax. And they're paying a lot more than a lot of us are on residential property, that's for sure. And so it's not really that, you know, your slide says, well, each homeowner would pay that. Well, depends on how you slice it. The other thing of interest is the new market tax credits. Is there a plan for the city to pursue that? Because $3 million is substantial to go against this if that happens.
Yeah, we engaged with the consultant out of Texas who's shopping our project right now to those CDEs, those certified development entities that get the allocation of credits from the federal government.
Because that'd be a great success if we can make that happen.
Yep.
Just wanted to make sure I understand and clarify. So the McCown Gordon, the construction manager at risk, I understand that the timeline's pretty sensitive. Can you just run through that one more time and let me make sure that I understand? And if that is is this unique that or is it something we've done in other circumstances? I just want to make sure that this isn't no one-off, and we want to make sure the public understands that too.
Sure. So we started a process for the parking garage and Laramie to select a contractor. The garage itself is unique enough. We worried about going to bid and going through a bidding process in order to secure a quality contractor. So we end up with a product that we can maintain and service and run for 40 years. So we recognize that uniqueness, but there's also advantages to going either design, build, or construction manager at risk, because you get to vet your contractor and make sure they have the experience that you're after. They have proven and qualified themselves on other projects. You can check with references. So we went through a public vetting process. McCown and several other contractors submitted. Commissioner Butler and city staff and folks from Aggieville and our consultants sat in on the selection hearing. So we evaluated all their proposals, much of which you've done now for the joint maintenance facility, and you decide whether or not you're going to interview. We ended up interviewing a couple, and we selected McCown. So they went through a vetting process. In some respects, it's our error for not including 12th Street. It's $2 more million of the 16.5. Those prior projects are 14.5. We know we're going to get a good contractor who has proven history of doing projects like this. There's a lot of public coordination that we need in this area. We don't just want to settle for a contractor that's not going to pay attention to the needs of staff, to the needs of our businesses and our community. We vetted that out as well during our process. So we're very comfortable with going with McCown, given the vetting process we went through. And that's why we're suggesting we go with them for this additional $2 million. How we want to handle the remainder, the 13.5, we want to start another process to hire, and see if there's another CMAR out there we want to go with, or traditionally design, bid, build. Our hesitation has been really based on our experience and not being able to vet out these contractors, knowing we're in sensitive situations and knowing we want a product at the end of the day that's proven, has kind of led us more to a design, build, and construction manager at risk process.
Thank you. I think it's important to know that if somebody just caught a piece of that, it might sound or be misconstrued that we're trying to move forward without that proper vetting. So thank you for going through that.
You bet.
Questions? Yeah. Public comment?
Good evening. I'm Dennis Cook with the Aggieville Business Association. We're excited to get to this point finally. It's been a while. We've been talking about some of this stuff since 2005. And some of the background on that first sheet that I know that was sent to you has got really some of the best points for us that we are, on the verge of reinventing, and we're about, and it talked about making Aggieville a vibrant, historic, pedestrian-oriented urban district. And these are the things that we're really looking at. We're due for a redevelopment or just a fix on the streets or fix on the sidewalks, but just a basic fix of those things that have gone fairly well neglected probably for the last 30 years. Doesn't really change the game any. And what we're trying to do is really promote Aggieville, promote the city. Part of also this was written that said promote general and economic welfare of the city, and I think these plans really do that. The option one is the one that we have looked at and are most excited about, because that gives us a real blueprint, a boilerplate for how we want to move forward. That's the look that we're after. That's the thing that changes the game for us down there in Aggieville. So if looking ahead as we move on, the hotel, and really starting to develop a better look as even as you come down Bluemont, you'll recognize that you're in a different district. Here's something that's going on, and that option one is ideal for us, and that's what the majority of the board, that's what we've talked about, and that's what we're hoping for.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Questions for Dennis or anything? Okay, thank you. Other public comment?
I'm Cam Ward. I own the Alms Group Real Estate right next to Tanner's on Morrow. We own our building as well. I've been really impressed lately with the process that this has gone through. I feel like city staff has held meetings. They've listened to concerns that business owners have. And I was happy to see the option one, and I think that's a good look for the district. What I would ask this commission to consider is very carefully what that impact of removing parking does to the district. I know we know very well that Morrow Street has not been planned out. It hasn't been paid to be designed, whatever. But as parking spots continue to get eliminated, there's a pretty significant impact to businesses that do have that $10 or less transaction. And I see a major disconnect if we're gonna do these changes to 12th Street. It seems to me really hard that Morrow Street is gonna go through changes that aren't gonna look similarly. I love the look without the curb, but if we do 12th Street and take 10, and then we go further south on 12th Street, take another dozen, then we turn the corner on Morrow, what are we taking there and how does that impact business? This summer is gonna be tough in Aggieville. The first construction project for I don't know how many years down there with the streets, it's going to be tough. So I would just ask that you guys really pay attention to what's going on with those businesses down there. How is Takalucha's business affected by it? How is Tanner, So Long, all those businesses affected? Obviously Stickles is going to be greatly affected as well. A couple bad months put people out of business. It's not just this thing you can throw a Band-Aid on and say, okay, when that project is done, we're gonna have a beautiful district, they're gonna thrive. A couple bad months, especially when students are gone, is significant. So I would urge the commission as well to explore what are some options for some temporary parking. Unfortunately, there were no options for that with the current hotel construction. I'm one of a few business owners who had that alley shut down. It's supposed to be for a few weeks. It's been a few months. I can't access my private parking, which not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but when we're talking about public parking that's being taken away for construction, mostly because of someone else's large private business that's going in there, referring to the hotel, that can be hard for business owners. So I would just ask that you consider what do those few weeks or months or year look like with construction, and what can the commission do as far as passing some new regulation for temporary parking so business owners and our customers can access our business and we don't have a couple bad months that put us out of business.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and come back to commissioner comments or questions.
Well, I generally like the first one. I like the idea of the pavers and such, and I liked that people stumbling out of the places in Aggieville won't have to fall off a curb. They'll just slide right down the brooks there. So I think we should do that throughout Aggieville, and so at a little bit at a time. But I think for the little bit extra that it's going to cost, I would like us to keep the trees and go with option one, because if we're going to try to make the place special, let's make the place special, and let's just try to do it right. And over 20 years, that $100,000, $70,000, whatever difference isn't going to make a hill of beans difference.
Yeah, just to answer the three questions there, you know, the preferred option, as the business owner said, they prefer option one. I think that's the best one, because it does provide that transition into that, pedestrian mall idea. And also it goes along with that, the comment on parking. I mean, I think as part of the decision to do this, we had determined, at least in my mind, not to remove all that parking on Morrow. There was talk before to make that a pedestrian area, but that's shifted, so that's got to go along with it. And the only modification I do to option one is again, the businesses, I like to go with what the business owners recommend whenever possible, and the Bluemont Hotel doesn't want that sidewalk tore up. It doesn't need to be replaced, it's perfectly serviceable, so let's just leave that alone and save $75,000, which makes, option one much closer to the other one. And then as I look at it, even the aesthetics, I mean, we've got a median in there, so it doesn't quite have the same impact, of having it on both sides. If it was a narrow street, okay, but with that medium in there, I think it's just not that vital. And if they want to do it when the sidewalk breaks in 15 years, fine, we can do it then. As far as the benefit district goes, yes, I think we should do that, and go with McCowan Gordon. I think they've got a great track record in town. I think everything from the Discovery Center to numerous projects, and I think we can count on them to get it right.
Thanks, John.
I too agree with the first option, and then minus the Bluemont side. I think that's makes a lot of sense. The presentation of how, I guess, the vision of what Aggieville could look like, and the presentation of coming into our community, the welcoming side of it, the opportunity for outsiders to see that and maybe want to be here, want to invest, want to bring more capital into the district is important. So the difference between the three options isn't significant to me enough to eliminate one. I think the top one's fine with me. The benefit districts make sense, and we heard about McCowan Gordon. I'm fine with moving forward with that. So I think we also just want, there isn't a solution here, but Mr. Ward and other business owners, the parking and the sacrifice, I guess, the collective sacrifice that's going to go into the business owners and the community as a whole as the construction would proceed is something we have to acknowledge and try to find ways to minimize or set aside. So thank you for speaking up on that, and please continue to do so.
I'm going to go with option B, because it's $1 million cheaper. And we have
I think it's 100,000.
100,000.
Not $1 million cheaper.
Hold on.
It's 1.6.
Here we go. Okay, $1.6 million.
And
Is
if you take
option
the
two.
75 off,
Yeah,
the one we
you're
got's
right.
$1.6 million.
You're right, yeah. Mhm. Well, I'm gonna go with option two. I think it's wonderful to have such a setting, but I think we have concrete streets everywhere and we get by with them. And I agree with dressing up the sidewalks with pavers and having planters, and I actually prefer the trees. And I know that if you really want to direct this inverted thing, you can do that with pavement too, not just with pavers. I think pavers are nice and they're really extra, but I think what else was I gonna say? Let's see. I do support a benefit district. I think when it's over, all of the Aggieville district will benefit, and that these are some special considerations that we don't do really in other parts, on a regular street, and so it's going to make a special climate and a special environment there. And of course, I don't have a problem with McCowan Gordon. I think they do quality work. So there.
Okay. I already mentioned I'm in favor of option 1, or A. It seems like there's both of those used in the pictures, the diagrams, and in the handouts. Like I said, I am very much in favor of the brick layout. Even in Colorado, wherever we go, there's a certain feel to it, and it makes it more vibrant. It is expensive compared to some of the other projects we have. Trees, I'm not stuck on one way or the other, so I think that suits it very well. Aggieville business area has one of the highest property valuations and property taxes. And that's something we need to consider, that when we say we want to invest in a community such as the Aggieville Business District, it falls on all of us to do our part. We want our young students or students from Kansas State University, Manhattan Area Technical College, from Fort Riley, one of the things we look for is for them to come and get a job here. And this is part of that process. This is part of our recruitment and retaining of our employees and workforce in the city of Manhattan. So I think it's very important that we invest back into it. The jobs of tomorrow are going to look very different, and they may not need one large building, or if they do have one large building, they're going to have lots of little office spaces because everybody does the co-working office spaces these days. So I think this sets it up for that kind of urban density, urban feel to it. So I'm looking forward to pursuing these projects. I'm glad you're going to look at the new market tax credits. It's always good to have an open mind for any projects or any grants or other types of revenue sources that we can utilize. It seems, I hope, David Tolden is working on more things to put in our toolbox as we move forward, because those are some of the things we're going to look at. We have more projects coming our way, and we're also going to be looking at the Ecodevo tax. Parking is always a concern. So I don't know what kind of solutions we can come up with. And I understand when you lose, if your property valuations are going up and your property taxes are going up, but you don't have enough foot traffic to buy the things that you're selling, it's going to be difficult for businesses to be successful, even for that short term. So I would like for us to look at other options during just for those few months, whether it's working with Kansas State University or other areas around town, not around town, but around the business areas. I'm comfortable with the contract to McGowan Gordon. I think they've done a fantastic job in the past. It just seems like we should have done that ahead of time. I don't like to see amendments come at the end because it says, I want us to be competitive in the whole process, but it seems like there's a timeline, and I don't want to keep that hotel from moving along because we really want to get them up and going as soon as possible. It's already causing a lot of headaches in that area, I think. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. And the benefit district, I'm open to the benefit district idea. I like it that we've been very collaborative and communicating well with our business district areas and the businesses. You never get 100% agreement because this is a lot of money for those businesses. But if we get at least 50, 60, 70% agreement on these projects, it helps our community. So as long as we're on the same page with the Aggieville Business District, I'm comfortable with moving forward with these options. Hopefully that's enough to move forward and come back with some first readings on some of these, because we really want to see that going. We've been talking about this for, seems like over a decade now, so it'd be good to see some projects coming along. And I think the downtown business district is evident of what can happen when we invest back in our community. That community is still growing. There are people that want to buy apartments downtown right now, and people are always in awe of our downtown, and we want Aggieville to be in the same area as the downtown is right now. With that, yes?
That if we were to get those new market tax credits, that would lower the bill across the board. It doesn't just take the city's part and make it less. It would make everybody's part a little less, right?
3 million.
Well, or is it just off the city's part of it?
So when you look at the majority of those sources, they are city. I mean,
Okay.
the benefit district is going to be calculated based on the improvement total.
Okay.
New markets won't necessarily factor into that. That
Okay.
new markets will help the city pick up its 95 of a benefit district. But the majority of it is a benefit back to the city, which eventually rolls into the taxpayer, the property tax side of this thing.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other comments? Ron? Anything else? Okay. All right, I think that's it for this evening. I've had like 3 short meetings in a row. Well, thank you. We are adjourned.